You look in the mirror after a shower, noticing a feature on your chest that has absolutely no practical purpose. As a male, you will never lactate, feed a child, or need these two tiny patches of sensitive skin. Yet, your body spent precious energy building them before you were even born, leaving you with this biological accessory. If they serve absolutely no function in your survival, why did evolution not simply skip them during your development? Every modern man carries these evolutionary relics, but they are not the result of some secret, hidden function. Instead, they are a fascinating byproduct of how your body was constructed in the very first weeks of life. To understand this, we must travel back to your first month inside the womb, when you were just an embryo. During the first 5 weeks of gestation, all human embryos follow a single, shared developmental blueprint for their bodies. At this early stage, you had no physical gender, no male characteristics, and no distinct reproductive organs yet. Your body was built using a default template, which begins constructing all primary organs and tissues first. Along this unisex pathway, a thin ridge of tissue called the milk line begins to form on your chest. Milk lines run from your armpits down to your groin, marking the future sites of your mammary glands. Along this ridge, cells thicken and sprout into the early structures of nipples, long before gender is decided. These tissues are locked into place early in embryonic life, waiting for the chemical signals that will shape you. Every human embryo, regardless of chromosomes, builds these nipples. But what happens when the genetic trigger finally activates? Until week 6, you possessed the potential to develop into either sex, following the default human body template. Your early anatomy was unisex, waiting for a master switch to redirect the path of your physical development. The nipples were already fully formed, sitting quietly on your chest wall, integrated into your growing skin layers. They are built during this neutral phase because building a body requires a highly structured, step-by-step assembly line. It is more efficient for the embryo to construct basic features first before customizing the body for gender. Think of it as a factory building a standard car chassis before deciding on the final paint color. This default body chassis includes nipples, early mammary tissue, and the basic pathways for your blood vessels and nerves. If the default plan continues uninterrupted, the embryo will naturally develop female anatomy and organs over time. This is why scientists often refer to the default human developmental pathway as the primary female template. Your nipples were built because your developing body assumed it was following this universal, initial human body blueprint. But deep inside your cells, a tiny genetic timer was ticking, waiting to override this default state. At week 6, a specific segment of your DNA prepared to activate and change your body forever. This trigger is a single gene located on the male Y chromosome, which you inherited from your father. Once this gene switches on, it sends a wave of chemical commands through your tiny embryonic body. What is this genetic switch, and how does it halt the development of your shared female template? The master switch is called the SRY gene, located exclusively on the tiny male Y chromosome in your cells. SRY stands for sex-determining region Y, and its single primary job is to initiate male embryonic development. If you had 2 X chromosomes, the SRY gene would be absent, and the female template would continue. But with a Y chromosome, the SRY gene activates around the 6th week, releasing a specific binding protein. This protein triggers a rapid chain reaction, instructing the neutral embryonic gonads to develop into male testes instead. Once these testes are formed, they immediately begin pumping out large amounts of the male hormone testosterone. This chemical surge floods your bloodstream, acting as a direct command to reshape your entire physical template. Testosterone instructs your developing body to build male reproductive organs, grow a prostate, and change your brain chemistry. The female pathways are suppressed, and the body begins its transformation into a fully distinct male phenotype. But this hormonal wave arrives too late to remove the features that were built during the first 5 weeks. The nipples, having already been constructed, cannot be dissolved or reabsorbed by the testosterone in your blood. Instead, they simply remain on your chest wall, locked in place as the rest of you changes. Testosterone halts the growth of the underlying mammary tissue, leaving the nipples in a permanently undeveloped state. The machinery for lactation is put on standby, never receiving the estrogen signals needed to grow larger. You are left with a permanent vestige of your female past. But why did evolution not prevent this overlap? Once testosterone dominates your system, your nipples become a biological dead end, serving no active reproductive role. They are classified as vestigial structures, organs that have lost all original function through the course of evolution. Like your appendix or your tailbone, they are physical markers of developmental history left behind on your body. The underlying mammary glands remain microscopic, lacking the hormonal stimulation of estrogen and progesterone to mature further. In females, puberty brings a surge of estrogen, causing these glands to develop into functional, milk-producing organs. But in your male body, the lack of high estrogen levels keeps this tissue completely dormant and small. Yet, the nerves, blood vessels, and sensitive skin of the nipple remain fully wired into your nervous system. It is an arrested state of development, a permanent freeze frame of the 5th week of your embryonic life. For millions of years, every male mammal has inherited this exact split development process right on their chests. From mice to lions, males carry nipples that serve no purpose in the survival of their species. If natural selection is constantly optimizing organisms for survival, why has it tolerated this useless feature for so long? You might assume that useless features are always eliminated by evolution because they waste valuable biological resources. But evolution does not work like a perfectionist designer who trims away every single scrap of excess material. To understand why you still have nipples, we must look at the actual cost of building them. Does this minor biological accessory really cost your body anything? The answer lies in evolutionary economics. Natural selection only eliminates traits that actively reduce an organism's chances of surviving and reproducing in the wild. If a feature is useless but harmless, it often slips past the evolutionary filter, remaining in the gene pool. Building nipples requires an extremely tiny amount of energy and protein during the early embryonic stage of life. Once they are built, they consume virtually no calories to maintain, making them metabolically free for your body. Because they do not drain your energy, they do not reduce your ability to hunt, gather, or find mates. There is no selective pressure to remove them, so mutation and selection simply ignore their presence on your chest. Furthermore, the genetic cost of deleting them might actually be highly damaging to the survival of the species. To evolve males without nipples, the entire shared embryonic pathway of the species would have to be dismantled. Why are you sad? Let's play. Groundwater erodes fossils. It is far safer and cheaper for evolution to use one shared blueprint rather than designing 2 separate templates. You are the recipient of this genetic compromise, a biological deal that prioritizes species survival over male perfection. This reveal challenges a common myth about evolution: the belief that every single feature must have a purpose. Biologists have a specific term for these purposeless, structural byproducts that hitch a ride on evolutionary designs. What is this concept, and how does it explain the beautiful, imperfect architecture of your own body. 79. Evolutionary biologists Stephen Jay Gould and Richard Lewontin introduced a revolutionary concept called spandrels. They borrowed the term from architecture, where a spandrel is the triangular space formed by intersecting arches. Khi một kiến trúc sư xây dựng các vòm để nâng đỡ một mái vòm, những khoảng trống hình tam giác này tự động được tạo ra. The spandrels were not designed for their own sake, yet they must exist because of the building's physical structure. Gould argued that many biological traits are just like these architectural spandrels, existing only as developmental byproducts. Your nipples are a classic biological spandrel, created because building a female template first is structurally necessary. They do not exist because they are useful. They exist because the developmental arch of the embryo requires them. This reveals that nature is not an all-knowing engineer, but a practical tinkerer working with existing constraints. Evolution does not seek perfection. It only seeks designs that are good enough to pass on genetic information. As a male, you are a walking collection of these evolutionary spandrels, leftovers of a shared developmental history. But do not assume these vestigial nipples are completely dead. The biological machinery inside them is only sleeping. Underneath your skin, you still possess the basic plumbing, milk ducts, and tissue of a female breast. This means that under very specific, unusual conditions, the dormant machinery in your chest can actually wake up. Can a man actually produce milk? The answer is a shocking yes, and it has occurred throughout history. How does this latent biological machinery activate, and what triggers this extreme, shocking medical phenomenon in males? Because men possess the same basic mammary tissue as women, the potential for lactation is always physically present. All that is required to activate this tissue is a shift in the delicate balance of hormones in your body. Specifically, you need a high level of the hormone prolactin, which signals the mammary glands to produce milk. In females, prolactin surges during pregnancy and breastfeeding, acting as the primary chemical trigger for milk production. In your male body, the pituitary gland normally releases only tiny, insignificant amounts of this hormone, prolactin. This small amount is easily suppressed by the high levels of testosterone circulating in your male bloodstream. But if your testosterone drops, or if prolactin surges, the dormant glands in your chest will begin to grow. Doctors call this abnormal growth of male breast tissue gynecomastia, a relatively common condition among modern men. If the hormonal imbalance is extreme enough, the growing male mammary tissue can actually begin to secrete milk. This has been documented in men taking specific medications that block testosterone or mimic these female hormones. It can also be caused by tumors in the pituitary gland that force it to pump out massive amounts of prolactin. But the most shocking cases of male lactation in history did not come from modern medical treatments. They occurred under conditions of extreme physical hardship, revealing a bizarre survival mechanism of the human body. How did starvation cause thousands of men to suddenly begin lactating during the mid-20th century wars? The secret lies in how your liver processes hormones when your body is pushed to the edge. During World War II, thousands of male survivors in prisoner of war camps experienced a bizarre medical phenomenon upon liberation. After months of severe starvation, these men were suddenly given access to abundant food and nutrition once again. But as their bodies recovered, many of these men noticed their breasts growing and producing actual milk. To understand why, we must look at your liver, the organ responsible for destroying excess hormones in your blood. Under normal conditions, your liver constantly filters out and destroys the small amount of estrogen your body produces. But during prolonged starvation, your liver is starved of nutrients and ceases to function properly, shutting down. The liver stops destroying estrogen, allowing this female hormone to slowly build up in the male bloodstream. At the same time, the starvation causes your hormone-producing glands to go into a deep state of hibernation. When the prisoners were finally liberated and fed, their hormone glands woke up much faster than their damaged livers. A massive surge of hormones flooded their systems, but their sluggish livers could not clear the estrogen away. This created a temporary female hormonal environment, triggering the dormant mammary glands to grow and lactate. Once the liver fully recovered and cleared the excess estrogen, the lactation stopped and hormone levels normalized. It was a striking demonstration of how close the male body is to activating its default female template. We are only a few hormonal adjustments away from performing a function we associate purely with motherhood. But while humans only lactate under extreme conditions, is there any mammal where males nurse their young naturally? This unique creature is the Dayak fruit bat, a small mammal native to the rainforests of Malaysia. Scientists discovered that wild male Dayak fruit bats possess functional mammary glands that produce real milk. They actively nurse their pups, sharing the heavy metabolic burden of lactation with the mothers of the colony. Biologists still debate why this bat evolved such a rare trait when all other male mammals did not. The leading theory is that their diet of fruit contains high levels of plant-based estrogens, triggering lactation. It is a fascinating evolutionary exception that proves the rule: the wiring for lactation is present in all males. If the environmental or genetic pressure is strong enough, evolution can turn these useless nipples into active tools. But for humans, the evolutionary path has kept male nipples vestigial, serving as a silent memory of embryology. This division of labor allows human males to focus their energy on protection and provisioning rather than nursing. But carrying this latent female machinery is not entirely free of risk for the modern man. Because you possess breast tissue, you are also vulnerable to the exact same diseases that affect women. This is the dark side of your vestigial nipples, a biological reality that many men completely ignore. What dangerous health risks are hiding underneath your chest skin, linked directly to your early embryo template? The answer is a critical medical truth that every man must understand for their own survival. Because men have mammary tissue and ducts, they can develop breast cancer, just like their female counterparts. While it is much rarer in males, accounting for less than 1% of all breast cancer cases today. It is often diagnosed at a much later, more dangerous stage because most men do not expect it. Men ignore lumps or changes on their chest, assuming breast cancer is a disease that only affects women. This late detection allows the cancer to spread quickly to the surrounding lymph nodes and other organs. Your vestigial nipples are not just a harmless curiosity. They require the same health awareness as women. This is the physical cost of carrying a half-billion-year-old evolutionary blueprint right on your own chest. You cannot have the shared template of human development without also inheriting its shared vulnerabilities. It is a reminder that our bodies are not custom-designed machines built for our individual gender roles. We are evolutionary patchworks, built on top of old templates, carrying the relics of our developmental past. This understanding changes how we look at our own anatomy, moving away from the myth of perfection. Your nipples are a physical record of the first 6 weeks of your existence inside the womb. They are a beautiful testament to the shared origin of all human beings, regardless of gender. Next time you look in your mirror, you are not just looking at your own male chest anymore. But what does this biological tie tell us about our deeper connection to the rest of the mammal world? It reminds us that we are part of a massive family tree, sharing genes and developmental paths with all mammals. The default female template is not unique to humans. It is an ancient trait shared across the mammalian lineage. From the tiny mouse to the giant blue whale, males carry these vestiges of their early embryonic life. They are a signature of our evolutionary history, a physical proof that we cannot easily erase our past. Even if a trait becomes completely useless, it stays with us as long as it is cheap to maintain. This is how nature operates, accumulating quirks, relics, and spandrels over millions of years of step-by-step change. Your body is a living museum, and your chest features are two of its most accessible exhibits. They show that evolution does not rewrite the code. It simply writes new lines on top of old ones. You are the result of 500 million years of genetic modifications, layered one on top of the other. Your nipples are not a mistake. They are a beautiful consequence of a system designed to build life efficiently. They connect you to your mother, your ancestors, and every male mammal that has ever walked the earth. Understanding this removes the expectation of anatomical perfection, allowing you to appreciate your body as it really is. A flawed biological masterpiece, carrying the ancient blueprints of life in every single cell of your body. Next time you see them, remember the 6-week-old embryo that started the journey of your life. So, do not just look in the mirror after a shower, but remember the shared template that built every human body.